Small-sided games are among the most frequently applied and most popular training exercises used by soccer coaches because, like matches, they provide players with opportunities for continuous exploration, discovery and learning of specific situations while simultaneously aiming at the development of technical, tactical, and physical components. SSGs are modified games played on a reduced-size field, often involving a smaller number of players and introducing adapted rules, which are different from regular 11A-side games. Most studies in small-sided games have been carried out in teams with the same numbers of players. Even though soccer is frequently played in numerical imbalance, either temporarily or permanently, and despite the fact that coaches regularly use floater players to regulate the load on some players. Therefore, the purpose of this study was to examine acute physiological responses and time-motion characteristics of regular players and floaters, and their relationship to the position of the floater, during a 4 versus 4+2 with the same pitch size, the number of players and rules. Method: 20 semi-professional male soccer players from the same team participated in the study. Players were involved in 5 training sessions per week plus 1 competitive match. To guarantee the recovery of the players, measurements took place at the same time of the week after the rest day. After the warm-up, the players' behavior in small-sided games was monitored and the session finished with a conditioned game with high technical and tactical requirements. Small-sided games. 5 small-sided games were implemented over the duration of the study. Training tasks were designed by technical staff to ensure the transference to the match by following specificity principle. The role of floaters was assigned to the same players during the study, and it was chosen by the coaches. Teams of 4 players aimed to retain ball possession, with the incorporation of 2 floaters, who always assumed an offensive role. The pitch size and the duration were constant in all the games. Locomotor activity. Running activity parameters were monitored using a GPS system. Total distance covered, and distances covered at several speeds. Accelerations and decelerations between 2.5–4 meters per second were also recorded. Heart rate and rate of perceived exertion. Maximal heart rate and mean heart rates achieved by players during the games were obtained using a short-range radio telemetry and integrated in the GPS units across the games. The 1 to 10 Borg scale for RPE was used to assess the global small-sided game's internal load. Results. Comparisons between floater players. The table and the figure show the external and internal loads of floaters depending on their position in the 4 versus 4+2 small-sided games. Total distance, number of accelerations and RPE were statistically higher in the internal floaters than in any other position. Likewise, internal floaters achieved a statistically greater number of decelerations than the external and square floaters, and greater distances covered, heart rate and heart rate max than the zone and square floaters. External floaters performed statistically more distances covered, heart rate max and RPE than the zone and square floaters, more total distance, accelerations, and decelerations than the square floaters, and fewer decelerations than the zone floaters. There were also statistical differences between the zone and square floaters, with the zone floaters showing more total distance and distance-covered accelerations and decelerations. Comparisons between regular players. The table and the figure present the internal and external load of regular players for the proposed small-sided games. With internal floaters, regular players covered statistically more distance covered at greater than 18 km times h1 than in any other format. With internal and external floaters, regular players reached statistically greater total distance and distance covered at 14 to 17.9 km times h1 than without floaters, with the zone and square floaters, and greater distance covered at 7 to 13.9 km times h1 than without floaters or with the zone floaters. Comparing the changes in velocity, it was found that regular players achieved statistically more decelerations with square floaters than in any other format. With external floaters and without floaters, regular players performed more accelerations than with the internal zone floaters. In the format with internal floaters, they performed statistically fewer decelerations than with the external floaters. The RPE when playing with internal and external floaters was statistically higher than in any other format of SSGs. They did not demonstrate statistical differences in the mean of HR and HR max across any evaluated drill. Comparisons of regular versus floater players. The figure reports the comparison of external and internal load between regular players and floaters. The analyses indicate that regular players achieved statistically greater total distance and distance covered at 7 to 13.9, 14 to 17.9, greater than 18 km h1, number of accelerations and RPE than floaters in all the game's formats. Regular players also reached a statistically greater number of decelerations and lower heart rate max than the external, zone and square floaters, and a higher heart rate mean than the zone and square floaters.